A medieval Homo sapiens with a frog mouth is completely true historical fact, and it's not about reptiloids, which certainly didn't exist. It was just the name of a specific helmet for jousting. Jousting is when two riders poke each other with huge spears with such force that the opponent was knocked off the horse. Sometimes this sporting duel ended with a respawn straight to the heaven to the god of one of the knights. That's the kind of jousting helmet I'm going to make in this video. At the beginning of the work, I drew the future frog mouth in full size. It helps a lot to make the right and convenient shape. Behind the scenes, I cut out a visor from 30 SGSS steel 3mm thick. Usually the visor for foot combat is 1.5 to 2mm thick, but here there will be different conditions and different strains. I created an initial band with a press, but I have to make the precise shape by hand. With this size of the part, it is very uncomfortable and difficult for the left hand. This work is definitely not for beginners. There will be a vertical ridge in the center of the visor. A rail press and heat help me create a rough shape. This is how, combining some devices and purely manual work, I get the shape of the visor that is typical for a 15th century tournament on horseback. The visor has a horizontal platform, or I also call it a shelf. This geometry is very practical and increases the strength of the eye slit many times over. A visor without such a shelf would be deformed by a rider's ramming, and the cut in the center was made to simplify the work and save about an hour of hard work. Here is a good example of why you need to draw a full-size drawing of a future helmet. It's very easy to check the dimensions and proportions of the part using such a drawing. And this is the back part. It is made of 2mm steel. This is less than the visor, because in a one-on-one tournament on horseback you can only get hit in the face. And when you fall from a horse, 2mm thickness is enough for reliable protection. Theoretically, I'm making a helmet for a reenactor historian, so let him test the fabulous world of medieval safety equipment himself. Thank God, I am not a reenactor. The cut in the middle of the pattern is made to speed up the production. I think I saved about an hour and a half of hard work. By the way, I post my patterns on Patreon. I also answer all questions and comments there. The rough shape of the visor and the nape is done, and I check how it fits on the body. You can see that the dimensions are huge, but that's exactly what you need if you plan to expose your skull to blow several tons. In general, it's better to have a hobby where you don't have some guy on horse trying to rip your head off. For example, it is very interesting to assemble 3D puzzles from your gears. By the way, this is a Ukrainian company. The kits and models are assembled without glue or special tools, and the coolest thing is that they function thanks to elastic bands or springs. So each model is mechanical. As practice shows, not only children but also adults would like such a gift, and I speak from experience. On the website you can find many models of different levels of complexity, from cars and trains to musical instruments and watches. For example, the mechanical tellurion is a wooden model that depicts the interaction between the Sun, Earth and Moon. Everything is clearly visible and understandable. And this is a 3D puzzle dragon thunderstorm with a mechanical heart. To start it, you need to turn the key and then press the start level. Then it starts flapping its wings and paws. I recommend visiting the website of UGears and looking for something interesting for yourself or someone else as a gift. By the way, every purchase made through my link in the description will help the channel a lot. Unfortunately, I didn't have such cool construction sets when I was a kid, but I did have a sledgehammer and pieces of metal. Let's get back to our helmet. The last detail is also 2 mm, not 3. The forehead part of the helmet has a steep slope and the spear will simply slide over it without hitting it. All 3 parts are ready and we can move on to various small operations. For example, finishing shaping the ribs on the visor. As you can see, I made a special chisel that follows the shape of the part. It helps to make all the lines smooth and symmetrical. Everything is plenished, all the ribs are forged and all the holes are drilled. Now we can harden it. I heat it up to 80 and 30 degrees and dip it in water, not oil, because it's 30 HDSA steel. Now I need to polish it. But this is very boring, so let me tell you a little bit more about rogue-mouth helmets. This concept of head protection evolved from the great helms. At the end of the 15th century, the great helm was already a typical rider's helmet used mainly in tournaments, although its early versions were purely military. Why did I call it a concept? Because all of these helmets were handmade and the shape and quality differed depending on the workshop that made the helmets. In such conditions, each helmet has unique features, although it also has some of the same functionality. There were ugly and crooked frog mouth helmets, but there were also beautiful ones. And some were so well made that Muscovite head damaged historians have formed a whole sect of alternative history supporters who consider such helmets impossible to manufacture in the Middle Ages. According to their version, the frog mouth helmet is an aquarium, because it's shaped like a jug. Water was poured into it and a fighting mollusk lived there. Even I and my reptilian friends see all the signs of reverse evolution in this. In general, a natural process for those who believe in biolaboratories with fighting geese. The frog mouth helmet, also called a Stechhelm, was attached tightly to the torso. For visibility, it had a narrow eye slit and a visor protruding forward. The helmet has a special liner that was tied to the helmet with laces or straps through special holes. This was how the suspension effect was achieved, similar to modern construction helmets. But the safety of jousting was achieved not only through the helmet. Lances, as tournament spears were called, used special tips. They had 3 or 4 pins. This was to make it impossible to penetrate the eye slit. And here is an example of a combat tip for comparison. But despite all the safety measures, the sport was still deadly. Usually, the force of the blow was so strong that the shaft broke and large splinters and fragments of the broken lance could hit the eye slit and cause fatal injury. One king was even unalived this way, which is why the church clergy regularly banned tournaments, and ordinary people were looking forward to such spectacular entertainment. Well, let's get back to our helmet. It has already been polished and I can do the final assembly. All 3 parts are riveted together. Now I am riveting from outside and forming the hemispherical head with a rivet snap. It's not very smooth, but it's typical for medieval armor. In general, there are 3 ways of riveting: from the inside, from the outside and contactless. The last one is available only to TikTokers and bloggers. For ordinary mortals, all they have to do is like this video and force 3 more Homo sapiens to watch it. Even physical interaction is allowed for motivation. This will really help the channel. Thank you. Behind the scenes, I sewed a helmet liner like this. Leather strips with holes are sewn to it, and they will be used to attach it to the helmet. And the helmet itself also has holes in the same places. This particular Stechhelm does not have the same historical source. At least I have not found one. It was just the helmet the client wanted. And I found a museum piece with the same top part, but I had to modify the bottom one. This was done taking into account the many different helmets of this type. Such reproduction cannot be called a reconstruction, but we can say that it is a high-quality medieval stylization and it is a frog mouth, not some other type of helmet. And this is what a knight in full armor looks like with this helmet. The whole set is also a medieval stylization of knightly armor from the late 15th century. Since you like this content, and only some moral perverts can dislike such beauty, so since you are not one of them, you need to watch a video on making a one-piece forged armet. This is also a historical helmet. Though, if you prefer fantasy, I recommend you to watch the video of making a Mandalorian helmet. And as always, many thanks to the Patreons of the channel. I use the money from Patreon for volunteering.